Your thoughts, words, emotions, and finances are all connected, and right now they're working against you. The four-pillar system will flip that fast. Control your mind, mouth, mood, and money. Audiobook by Declan Stone. Published by Beyond the Noise. Introduction. You stand at an invisible crossroads right now. In one direction stretches the familiar path, a life where racing thoughts keep you awake at night, where hasty words leave lasting regrets, where emotions hijack your best intentions, and where financial worries cast a constant shadow over your dreams. This is the path of reactive existence, where each domain, your mind, mouth, mood, and money, seems to work against you rather than for you. In the other direction lies a different reality, one where mental clarity guides your decisions, where your words carry power and purpose, where emotions provide wisdom rather than chaos, and where financial abundance flows from a place of inner security. This is the path of conscious creation, where these four fundamental domains work in harmony to support your highest potential. The struggle is real, trying to quiet an overactive mind while deadlines loom and responsibilities multiply. Speaking without thinking, then spending sleepless nights replaying conversations that went wrong. Watching as emotional reactions damage relationships and opportunities, making financial decisions from a place of fear or scarcity, only to see those choices reinforce the very stress they were meant to alleviate. But here's what most don't realize. These four domains, mind, mouth, mood, and money, are not separate battles to be fought. They are interconnected pillars of the same temple, your life. Like the ancient structures that have stood for millennia, the strength of your life's temple depends on the integrity of each pillar supporting it. When one weakens, the entire structure becomes unstable. Think of how anxiety in your mind leads to reactive speech, which triggers emotional turbulence, ultimately affecting your financial choices, or how financial stress clouds your thinking, strains your communication, and destabilizes your emotional well-being. These pillars don't exist in isolation. They're constantly influencing and amplifying each other. This book isn't about adding more strategies to your already overwhelming list of self-improvement techniques. It's about seeing these four domains through a new lens, not as problems to fix, but as aspects of the same consciousness seeking alignment. You've likely tried addressing each area separately, perhaps experiencing temporary improvements before old patterns resurface. That's because strengthening one pillar while neglecting others creates an unsustainable imbalance. The journey ahead will transform how you relate to each domain. You'll discover how your mind can shift from chaos to clarity, your words from reactive to purposeful, your emotions from turbulent to insightful, and your relationship with money from scarcity to abundance. When these pillars align, they create a foundation for a life of unprecedented freedom and fulfillment. The power to transform your experience in all four domains already exists within you. It awaits only your willingness to see differently, to understand the interconnected nature of these pillars, and to approach them not as separate challenges but as expressions of your unified potential. Chapter 1. The Four-Pillar System. How Everything Connects. You've experienced it before. The frustration of partial progress. Perhaps you've mastered your mindset through disciplined meditation and positive thinking, yet still find yourself speaking words you regret. Or maybe you've developed exceptional emotional intelligence, but continue struggling with financial decisions that don't align with your wisdom. Why does improvement in one area of life often fail to create the overall transformation we seek? The answer lies in understanding a profound truth. Your mind, mouth, mood, and money aren't separate challenges to overcome. They're interconnected expressions of the same underlying consciousness. Like four chambers of a heart, each must function in harmony for the whole system to thrive. When one domain falters, it creates ripple effects that undermine progress in all others. Consider how this system operates in your daily life. A worried thought about finances triggers tense conversations with loved ones, leading to emotional strain that further impairs your ability to make sound financial choices. Or notice how speaking harsh words in a moment of frustration creates mental turbulence that affects your emotional balance, ultimately influencing your productivity and earning potential. This interconnection reveals why traditional approaches to personal development often fall short. Trying to fix your relationship with money while ignoring how you speak about it, or attempting to master your emotions while maintaining thought patterns that trigger them, is like trying to calm a stormy sea by smoothing only one wave at a time. The principle of resonant harmony explains why progress accelerates when all four domains align. Just as a well-tuned orchestra creates music greater than the sum of its individual instruments, alignment across mind, mouth, mood, and money generates a state of coherence where improvement in one area naturally enhances all others. The key to transformation lies not in working harder within each domain, but in understanding how they influence each other. Your thoughts shape your words. Your words affect your emotions. Your emotions guide your financial decisions, and your financial situation influences your thoughts, completing a cycle that can either spiral upward toward growth or downward toward limitation. This understanding transforms how you approach change. Rather than exhausting yourself trying to maintain control in all areas simultaneously, you can identify your system's sensitive leverage points, those places where small adjustments create maximum impact. For some, bringing awareness to their speech patterns naturally settles their mind and emotions. For others, stabilizing their emotional responses automatically improves their communication and financial choices. The four-pillar system isn't about perfecting each domain independently. It's about creating alignment that allows your natural wisdom to flow unobstructed through all areas of life. When you understand this fundamental unity, transformation becomes less about forcing change and more about removing the barriers between who you are and who you could be. Your journey of transformation begins with this vital shift in perspective, seeing these four domains not as separate battlegrounds, but as different expressions of your fundamental nature. Like sunlight refracting through a prism into different colors, your consciousness expresses itself through thinking, speaking, feeling, and exchanging value. When these expressions align, they create a life of harmony, purpose, and fulfillment. This is the promise of the four-pillar system, not another set of techniques to master, but a new way of seeing that reveals the hidden connections between all aspects of your life. As you explore each pillar in the coming chapters, you'll discover how strengthening one naturally reinforces all others, creating a sustainable foundation for lasting transformation. The question isn't which domain to focus on first. It's how to recognize and work with the interconnected nature of your entire life system. Because when you change how you see these relationships, you change everything. Your thoughts shape your words influence your emotions guide your financial choices, and those choices feed back into your mental state. This dynamic interplay means that growth in one area naturally ripples through your whole experience. A moment of mental clarity leads to more authentic communication, which creates emotional resonance, ultimately transforming how you interact with money and value. By embracing this holistic understanding, you free yourself from the trap of compartmentalized improvement and step into the flow of natural, sustainable transformation. Chapter 2: The Hidden Architecture of Change: Why Most Transformation Fails. Imagine spending thousands on fresh paint, new fixtures, and modern appliances to renovate your home. The surface changes create immediate impact. Everything looks perfect. Yet within months, cracks appear in the walls. Doors stop closing properly. That beautiful paint begins to chip and peel. Despite your best efforts at maintenance, the improvements continue deteriorating. Because beneath the surface, the foundation itself is shifting and unstable. This scenario perfectly captures why so many attempts at personal transformation ultimately fail. You've likely experienced this pattern yourself, implementing positive changes that create exciting initial progress, only to watch those improvements gradually erode as old patterns reassert themselves. The problem isn't your commitment or effort. The issue lies in a fundamental misunderstanding about how lasting change actually works. Beneath every visible behavior, habit, or pattern in your life exists an invisible architecture, a complex network of beliefs, perspectives, and awareness that shapes how you interpret and respond to reality. This hidden structure determines whether any change you attempt will take root and flourish, or wither and fade. Understanding this architecture is essential for creating sustainable transformation rather than temporary improvement. This invisible architecture operates through three critical dimensions. The first is depth, the relationship between surface behaviors and the core beliefs that generate them. Most change efforts focus exclusively on modifying actions while leaving intact the underlying beliefs that created those actions in the first place. This approach is like painting over rotting wood. The fresh coat looks good initially but cannot prevent the decay beneath from eventually showing through. The second dimension is breadth, the difference between isolated changes and integrated transformation. When you attempt to change one aspect of life without addressing related areas, you create internal conflict that inevitably undermines progress. This explains why diets often fail when eating habits are modified without examining emotional patterns around food, or why communication skills training rarely sticks without addressing underlying anxiety or self-worth issues. The third dimension is sequence, the critical difference between addressing symptoms versus sources. While treating symptoms can provide temporary relief, lasting change only occurs when you trace issues to their root and transform them there. This is why positive thinking alone rarely creates sustained mental clarity. It attempts to override negative thoughts without understanding their source in deeper beliefs about self and reality. The appeal of surface-level change is obvious. It promises faster results with less discomfort. Who wouldn't prefer a quick fix to deep transformation? Yet this very attraction explains why such approaches ultimately disappoint. Real change requires engaging with the architecture itself, rather than just its visible expressions. This principle of architectural change isn't new. It appears in wisdom traditions across cultures and throughout history. Ancient philosophers, spiritual teachers, and modern psychologists have all recognized that sustainable transformation flows from the inside out, not the outside in. What appears as novel insight is actually a timeless truth about how human consciousness evolves and grows. The difference between symptomatic and architectural change becomes clear when you observe their long-term results. Symptomatic change creates improvement that depends on constant maintenance, like holding a beach ball underwater. The moment you relax your vigilance, old patterns resurface. Architectural change, while often slower initially, creates self-sustaining transformation that grows stronger over time, like altering the course of a river by changing the shape of its banks. Take a moment to reflect on areas where you've been attempting surface changes while neglecting deeper architecture. Where have you tried to force new behaviors without examining the beliefs driving old ones? What patterns keep reasserting themselves despite your best efforts to change them? These persistent challenges point to places where architectural work is needed. The seeming slowness of architectural change often triggers impatience, a desire to rush toward visible results. Yet this timeline actually represents intelligent sequencing rather than delay. Like constructing a building, proper foundation work may appear to progress slowly compared to adding walls and windows. But without that essential groundwork, anything built will remain fundamentally unstable. Within each domain of the four-pillar system, mind, mouth, mood, and money, exists its own architecture that must be understood and addressed. These structures interact and reinforce each other, creating the overall framework that either supports or undermines your efforts at growth. Architecture begins with awareness, and awareness begins with understanding how your mind creates your experience of reality. This fundamental truth shapes every aspect of your life, though its influence often remains invisible. Your thoughts don't just reflect your reality, they actively construct it, filtering and interpreting each moment through the lens of your beliefs and expectations. When you grasp this profound connection between your inner world and outer experience, you unlock the first door to lasting transformation. Chapter 3. The Thought Before the Thought. Finding the Source of Mental Patterns. What if the thoughts you're aware of are merely echoes of deeper thoughts you've never noticed? This question strikes at the heart of personal transformation, pointing to a profound truth about the nature of your mind. When you face a challenge, whether it's a critical comment from someone, an unexpected financial setback, or a moment of self-doubt, specific thought patterns emerge with such speed and familiarity that they feel like an automatic part of who you are. These surface thoughts, the ones you can readily identify, represent only the visible portion of your mental landscape. Like the tip of an iceberg, they hint at much larger structures hidden beneath the surface of conscious awareness. These deeper structures, what we might call the thought before the thought, comprise the foundational beliefs, assumptions, and mental models that generate your conscious thinking patterns. Understanding this deeper architecture of thought transforms how you approach personal change. When you struggle with persistent negative thinking, focusing solely on changing individual thoughts is like trying to calm ocean waves by smoothing them with your hand, a futile effort that ignores the underlying currents generating those waves. Your beliefs function as invisible lenses through which you perceive and interpret every experience. These lenses don't just color your perception, they actively filter and shape what you notice, what you ignore, and how you make sense of everything that enters your awareness. This filtering happens so rapidly and automatically that you rarely notice it occurring. Consider how your mind processes information. By the time you become aware of a thought, it has already passed through multiple layers of interpretation shaped by your core beliefs about yourself, others, and the nature of reality itself. These beliefs act like a sophisticated algorithm, continuously scanning your environment and generating thoughts that align with your existing mental models. The true power lies not in attempting to force different thoughts, but in developing awareness of the deeper beliefs generating your current thought patterns. This shift in focus, from surface thoughts to source beliefs, represents a fundamental transition from symptomatic treatment to genuine transformation. Modern neuroscience continues to validate what contemplative traditions have taught for millennia. Your conscious thoughts emerge from deeper neural networks shaped by accumulated beliefs and experiences. These networks operate below the threshold of conscious awareness, yet they fundamentally determine the nature of your conscious experience. This understanding reveals why attempting to change individual thoughts often proves ineffective in creating lasting transformation, without addressing the underlying belief systems generating those thoughts. New positive thinking patterns lack the foundation necessary for sustainability. The path forward begins with developing what we might call root awareness, the ability to trace surface thoughts back to their originating beliefs. This involves a subtle shift in attention from the content of thoughts to their source. Rather than engaging with thoughts directly, you learn to see them as signals pointing toward deeper structures of belief. Through this lens, recurring thought patterns become valuable indicators rather than problems to solve. Each pattern offers insight into the underlying beliefs shaping your mental landscape. The key lies not in forcing different thoughts, but in illuminating and understanding the beliefs generating your current patterns. This process requires patience and precision. Root-level awareness develops gradually as you learn to distinguish between surface thoughts and their generating beliefs. With practice, you begin to recognize how specific beliefs create predictable patterns of thinking across multiple situations. The challenge isn't in the complexity of this process, but in its subtlety. Your beliefs have likely operated unnoticed for so long that they feel like objective reality rather than learned perspectives. Bringing them into awareness requires a gentle yet persistent inquiry into your own mental patterns. Your mind contains depths you've likely never explored. The thoughts you're conscious of represent only the final stage of a complex process, beginning with core beliefs about yourself and reality. Understanding this deeper architecture of thought opens the door to genuine transformation, not through forcing change, but through illuminating what was previously hidden. This marks the beginning of a profound shift in your relationship with your own mind. Rather than being caught in an endless cycle of trying to change surface thoughts, you can begin addressing the root system generating those thoughts in the first place. Chapter 4. The Observer's Advantage. Creating space between stimulus and response. Picture yourself in the grip of an overwhelming emotional reaction, that familiar surge of anger, anxiety, or frustration coursing through your body. Your heart races, your muscles tense, and your thoughts spiral in an all too familiar pattern. Now imagine, in that same heated moment, something remarkable happens. You suddenly step back from the intensity, as if watching the entire scene unfold on a screen. While the emotions continue to play out, you're no longer completely consumed by them. You've accessed what neuroscience reveals as one of the most transformative capacities of human consciousness: the ability to observe your own experience. This shift in perspective, from being fully identified with your reactions to witnessing them with awareness, represents what psychology researchers call metacognition, the capacity to observe your own mental processes. This isn't about suppressing emotions or controlling thoughts. It's about discovering a dimension of consciousness that exists prior to and independent of whatever mental content arises. Think of consciousness like a vast sky, with thoughts and emotions as passing weather patterns. Most of the time, we're so focused on the weather, the storm of anxiety, the clouds of doubt, the lightning strikes of anger, that we forget we are also the sky that holds it all. This sky-like awareness remains unchanged regardless of what moves through it. When you're caught in an emotional spiral, Your entire reality becomes filtered through that emotional lens. A neutral comment from someone becomes loaded with threatening meaning. Past experiences rush in to reinforce your reaction. Future scenarios play out in your mind, amplifying your stress. Yet all of this mental activity happens within a field of awareness that itself remains undisturbed, like the depth of the ocean remaining still despite turbulent surface waves. The revolutionary insight here isn't that you need to develop this observing capacity. It's already fundamentally present in your consciousness. What's needed is simply recognizing it. This recognition creates what psychologists call psychological space, a gap between stimulus and response where choice becomes possible. Studies in neuroplasticity demonstrate that this capacity for metacognitive awareness physically rewires neural pathways. When you consistently observe thoughts and emotions rather than being completely identified with them, you strengthen the neural networks associated with emotional regulation and cognitive flexibility. You're not just changing your perspective, you're literally reshaping your brain. This observational stance represents a profound shift from doing to being. Instead of trying to fix or change your experience, you're simply witnessing it with awareness. This may seem passive, but research shows it's actually the most powerful position for lasting transformation. When you fully observe without resistance, patterns that have persisted for years often naturally unwind. The power of the observer perspective lies in its ability to reveal the difference between your essential awareness and the contents of consciousness, your thoughts, emotions, and sensations. While these contents constantly change, the observing awareness remains unchanged. This recognition creates an unshakable foundation of stability, even amid life's greatest challenges. When you access this observer perspective, you discover that emotions don't disappear. They simply no longer define your entire reality. Thoughts don't stop, but they no longer completely capture your attention. You gain the ability to experience life's full intensity while maintaining an inner anchor of clarity and presence. This observational capacity exists on a spectrum. Sometimes you might notice it only briefly after an emotional reaction. Other times, you might maintain awareness throughout a challenging interaction. The key is recognizing that this capacity is always available, even if momentarily forgotten. The observer perspective reveals that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not even the story you tell about yourself. You are the awareness within which all these experiences arise. This fundamental recognition transforms your relationship with every aspect of experience, from mundane daily irritations to life's biggest challenges. This isn't about achieving some special state or having only positive thoughts. It's about discovering the freedom that exists in simply being aware. When challenging thoughts or emotions arise, you don't need to fix or change them. Your task is simply to notice what's arising while recognizing the awareness that's noticing. In this space of pure observation, you'll find a profound liberation, not because your experiences have changed, but because your relationship to them has shifted. You might still feel anger, fear, or doubt, but you're no longer completely identified with these experiences. They become like weather patterns moving through the vast sky of your awareness, sometimes stormy, sometimes clear, but never defining the sky itself. Chapter 5. Rewiring the Mental Circuit. Transforming Limiting Beliefs. When you imagine your mind, you likely picture a complex web of thoughts, memories, and patterns. But there's a more revealing way to understand how your mind operates. Picture an expansive electrical grid powering a vast city. In this grid, electrical current naturally follows the paths of least resistance, creating predictable patterns of illumination and darkness across the urban landscape. Some areas consistently blaze with light, while others remain perpetually dim, all determined by the established circuitry beneath the surface. This mental circuitry explains why you often find yourself thinking the same thoughts, reacting with the same emotions, and making the same choices even when you consciously desire change. Just as electricity follows existing pathways, your thoughts travel along neural channels carved by years of repetition. This isn't a flaw in your psychology. It's the fundamental nature of how your brain operates. Neuroscience has revealed that these mental pathways are physical structures in your brain, formed through a process called neuroplasticity. When you repeatedly think certain thoughts or react in specific ways, you strengthen these neural connections, making them more likely to activate in the future. This explains why breaking free from limiting patterns can feel so challenging. You're literally working against established physical pathways in your brain. However, this same neuroplasticity that creates limiting patterns also holds the key to transformation. Your brain maintains its ability to form new neural pathways throughout your entire life. Just as a river's course can be redirected by consistently carving a new channel, your mental patterns can be rewired through focused attention and repetition. Understanding this process transforms how you approach personal change. Rather than fighting against existing patterns, which paradoxically strengthens them through attention, you can focus on building compelling alternative pathways that naturally draw mental energy in new directions. This is the essence of mental rewiring. The science behind this process is clear. When you consistently direct your attention toward new thoughts and responses, you physically alter your brain's structure. Initially, these new pathways require conscious effort to activate, just like cutting a new channel requires more energy than letting water flow along its usual course. But with consistent reinforcement, these new pathways become stronger, while unused circuits gradually weaken. This isn't about positive thinking or forcing yourself to eliminate negative thoughts. Such approaches often backfire because what you resist persists. Fighting against thoughts only strengthens their underlying circuits. Instead, mental rewiring focuses on building new, empowering circuits that naturally become your default patterns through consistent activation. The key to successful rewiring lies in understanding that awareness precedes change. Without the capacity to observe your existing patterns, attempting to create new ones becomes like trying to redirect a river while blindfolded. This is where the observer perspective becomes crucial. It allows you to witness your current patterns without becoming entangled in them, creating the space needed for intentional rewiring. The process begins with identifying the specific circuits you want to rewire. These might be patterns of self-doubt, automatic negative reactions, or limiting beliefs about your capabilities. Once identified, you can begin the systematic process of building alternative pathways. This involves crafting new perspectives that feel both authentic and compelling. Not just positive affirmations, but genuine shifts in how you understand yourself and your potential. The timeline for this transformation follows predictable phases. Initial changes in your thinking patterns may be noticeable within days, but sustainable rewiring typically requires about 30 days of consistent attention. This timeline isn't arbitrary. It reflects the biological process of strengthening neural connections through repeated activation. As these new circuits strengthen, you'll notice changes rippling through all 4 domains of mind: mouth, mood, and money. Thoughts that once seemed automatic begin to lose their grip. Words that used to spring unconsciously to your lips no longer feel natural. Emotional reactions that seemed inevitable become less compelling. Financial decisions that once felt impulsive now pass through new filters of awareness. This rewiring process represents a fundamental shift in how transformation occurs. Rather than trying to force change through willpower, you're working with your brain's natural mechanisms for creating new patterns. The key lies not in how hard you push, but in how consistently you direct your attention toward the new pathways you wish to strengthen. Chapter 6. Words as Seeds: The Generative Power of Language. Your words carry more power than you realize. Each syllable that leaves your lips acts as a seed, planted deep within the fertile soil of consciousness. These seeds don't care about your intentions or hopes. They grow exactly what you plant, manifesting with unwavering precision in your life and relationships. This truth becomes evident when you observe how your habitual language patterns correlate directly with your recurring experiences. The impact of your words extends far beyond mere communication. When you declare "this is impossible," you're not just describing a situation. You're programming your brain to identify and magnify evidence of impossibility. When you unconsciously pepper your speech with "I'm trying," you encode perpetual effort without completion. Your subconscious mind doesn't filter these statements for accuracy or intention. It simply accepts them as instructions for reality creation. This phenomenon of generative language operates through your neural circuitry with remarkable consistency. Research in neurolinguistics demonstrates that speech patterns trigger specific neural pathways, releasing corresponding biochemical responses throughout your body. Negative self-talk doesn't just feel bad. It activates stress hormones and suppresses immune function. Empowering language doesn't just sound good. It enhances cognitive performance and physical capability. Consider how different seeds produce vastly different harvests. Words of complaint, like thorny weeds, multiply rapidly and choke out possibility. Critical speech, like an invasive species, damages everything in its path, including the speaker. Meanwhile, words of appreciation, like nutrient-rich crops, nourish and sustain both speaker and listener. The harvest is always true to the seed, regardless of what you wished you had planted instead. This principle appears across wisdom traditions worldwide. From ancient Hindu mantras to indigenous creation stories to modern psychological research, the consistent message: words shape reality. Not through magical thinking, but through their direct impact on perception, behavior, and relationship dynamics. The transformation begins with verbal awareness, developing the capacity to notice not just what you say, but the underlying patterns and assumptions embedded in your speech. Pay attention to your default responses in challenging situations. Notice the qualifiers and conditionals that weaken your statements. Observe how often you speak in absolutes that eliminate possibility. When you catch yourself in disempowering speech patterns, the key isn't self-judgment, but immediate redirection. This speech pattern interrupt works like a circuit breaker, stopping problematic language before it can take root. The focus isn't on perfection, but on progressive improvement in your communication choices. Speech patterns typically cluster into recognizable categories that limit potential. Complaint: nothing ever works out. Criticism: I always mess things up. Justification: I would have succeeded, but. Denial: it's not that bad. Exaggeration: this will take forever. Absolutism: I'll never be able to. And defeatism: why even try? Each pattern creates its own self-reinforcing cycle of experience. The key to transformation lies not in rigid monitoring, but in developing new patterns that feel authentic and aligned with your deeper truth. As you shift from unconscious reaction to conscious creation in your speech, you simultaneously rewire the neural pathways explored in the previous chapter. Every mindful word choice strengthens new circuits while allowing old patterns to gradually fade from lack of use. Your communication evolves naturally when you understand that words are not just descriptive, but prescriptive. They literally prescribe the reality you'll experience. This understanding transforms casual speech into conscious creation, making every conversation an opportunity for positive change. This mastery of generative language begins with the most crucial conversation of all, the ongoing dialogue you have with yourself. The words you speak silently shape your self-concept, influence your emotions, and determine the possibilities you'll allow yourself to explore. As you become more aware of this internal conversation, you gain the power to consciously shape your experience from the inside out. The most profound shift occurs when you recognize that your words don't just describe your reality, they create it. Every statement is a seed, every conversation a garden, and your consistent speech patterns determine the landscape of your life. What you speak repeatedly becomes your experience inevitably. The question isn't whether your words will manifest, but what kind of harvest you're planting with each passing day. This truth becomes strikingly clear when you observe how your language shapes your relationships, opportunities, and self-image. A single word of encouragement can open doors that seemed forever sealed, while a moment of harsh criticism might close pathways you've spent years building. Your words ripple outward, touching not only your immediate circumstances but the very fabric of your future experiences. Think of language as the architect's blueprint for the structure of your life. Just as a blueprint determines what will be built, your words lay the foundation for what you'll encounter. When you declare something impossible, you've already constructed the walls of your limitation. When you speak of potential and possibility, you're designing doorways to new opportunities. Chapter 7. The Listener Within. Speaking to your deepest self. Your subconscious mind operates like a diligent and trusting child, absorbing every word you speak to yourself without question or filter. This inner dimension of your consciousness doesn't analyze, argue, or evaluate the truth of your statements. It simply accepts and acts upon whatever programming you provide through your self-talk. Most people speak to themselves in ways they would never dream of speaking to someone they care about. When you make a small mistake, your inner dialogue might instantly launch into harsh criticism. "I'm so stupid," or "I never get anything right." Your subconscious mind, that faithful inner listener, takes these statements as literal instructions, working tirelessly to align your experience with these declarations. This power of self-talk becomes evident when you examine how your internal dialogue shapes your self-image, which in turn determines what you believe possible. Your capabilities aren't limited by your actual potential, but by the boundaries established through years of accumulated self-communication. Like an operating system running in the background of a computer, your self-talk creates the parameters within which all other functions must operate. The impact of this inner dialogue extends far beyond momentary emotional states. Neuroscience reveals that habitual self-talk patterns create neural pathways that become your brain's default response to challenges and opportunities. When you repeatedly tell yourself, "I'm not good with money," you're not merely expressing a current limitation. You're reinforcing a neural network that automatically seeks evidence to confirm this belief. You may notice resistance to the idea that self-talk holds such power. After all, these are just thoughts, right? But consider how your body responds to negative self-talk. The tension in your shoulders, the knot in your stomach, the shallow breathing. These physiological responses demonstrate that your entire system treats self-talk as real and meaningful input. The transformation of self-talk begins with heightened awareness. Start noticing the specific language patterns you use when facing challenges in each of the four domains. In the realm of mind, you might catch yourself saying, "My thoughts are out of control." Regarding communication, perhaps, "I always say the wrong thing." With emotions, "I shouldn't feel this way." And about money, "I'll never have enough." Your inner listener faithfully records and responds to each of these statements, creating a self-fulfilling cycle that can only be broken through conscious intervention. The practice of compassionate redirection involves catching these limiting statements and consciously choosing language that supports growth rather than reinforces limitation. This isn't about positive thinking or denial of challenges. It's about accurate, growth-oriented self-communication that acknowledges current reality while maintaining focus on potential. Instead of, "I'm terrible with money," you might say, "I'm learning to make wise financial decisions." Rather than, "I can't control my emotions," try, "I'm developing greater emotional awareness." The self-talk inventory becomes a powerful tool for transformation. Throughout your day, notice and record the specific phrases you use in your internal dialogue. Look for patterns and triggers. When do critical self-talk patterns intensify? What situations consistently activate negative self-communication? This awareness creates the space needed for conscious choice. Your relationship with yourself forms the foundation for all other relationships. As you learn to speak to yourself with greater awareness and compassion, you naturally begin to communicate differently with others. The harsh judgment that once characterized your inner dialogue softens into understanding, creating a bridge not only between different aspects of yourself, but between you and others as well. The four domains, mind, mouth, mood, and money, each have their own characteristic self-talk patterns. Pay particular attention to how you speak to yourself about your capacity in each area. Do you question your ability to focus your mind, doubt your communication skills, criticize your emotional responses, undermine your financial capabilities? Each domain offers unique opportunities for transforming self-talk from limitation to empowerment. Remember, your inner listener accepts every word as truth. Each time you speak to yourself, you're planting seeds that will inevitably grow into experience. Choose these seeds wisely, understanding that today's self-talk becomes tomorrow's reality. Chapter 8. Bridges, not walls. Communication that connects rather than divide. Communication shapes not just what we understand, but the very reality we experience. When you describe an event to someone else, you're not merely reporting facts. You're revealing the unique lens through which you perceive the world. This lens, formed by your experiences, beliefs, and current emotional state, determines what details capture your attention, what meaning you assign to them, and how you convey that meaning to others. Your perception feels complete and accurate, yet it represents only one possible interpretation of reality. The same event witnessed by multiple people generates as many different versions as there are observers. Each person's account seems entirely valid to them, leading to the paradox where conflicting descriptions of the same situation can all be simultaneously true from different perspectives. This fundamental nature of human perception creates a critical choice in every interaction. Will you use communication to defend your perspective or to explore others? Will your words build walls or bridges? The difference lies not in the situations you face, but in how you approach them. Bridge-building communication begins with a profound shift in intention. Rather than focusing on being understood, you prioritize understanding. Instead of defending your perspective, you become curious about others. This shift transforms conversations from competitions into collaborations, from debates into discoveries. The human brain naturally processes information through established patterns, creating quick interpretations that feel like obvious truth. When someone describes a situation differently than you experienced it, the automatic response is to correct their misperception. Yet this impulse to correct often prevents genuine connection and understanding. Consider how different communication styles reflect different internal processing systems. Some people process information linearly, focusing on facts and sequences. Others process holistically, emphasizing relationships and emotions. Some require time to reflect before responding, while others process through verbal exploration. These differences aren't flaws to be corrected, but variations that can enrich understanding when properly bridged. The key to bridge building lies in recognizing that every perspective, including your own, offers valuable but incomplete insight. When someone's description differs from yours, rather than immediately disagreeing, pause to explore what their perspective might reveal that yours might miss. This approach doesn't require abandoning your own perception. It simply means expanding it to include additional dimensions of understanding. The quality of your communication directly reflects your relationship with uncertainty. Wall-building communication stems from the need to be right, to maintain the illusion of certainty. Bridge-building communication embraces the understanding that multiple valid perspectives can coexist, each offering unique insight into the whole. During challenging conversations, the instinct to defend your perspective often arises from deeper needs, to feel heard, respected, or validated. By recognizing these underlying needs in yourself and others, you can address them directly rather than through positional arguments. This awareness transforms potential conflicts into opportunities for deeper connection. The practice of perspective shifting requires temporarily stepping out of your own reality to explore another's. This doesn't mean agreeing with their view, but rather understanding how it makes sense from their position. This capability develops through conscious practice, beginning with simple situations and gradually extending to more challenging interactions. Many communication breakdowns occur because people respond from emotional triggers rather than conscious choice. The communication pause creates vital space between trigger and response, a moment to choose bridge building over wall building. This pause might last only seconds, but it can completely alter the trajectory of an interaction. Your words carry immense power to either unite or divide, to illuminate or obscure, to heal or harm. By approaching each interaction with the intention to build bridges rather than walls, you transform not just your conversations but the very nature of your relationships. Through bridge-building communication, you create connections that transcend differences, fostering understanding that enriches rather than diminishes the unique perspectives each person brings to the exchange. In every conversation, you stand at a choice point. Will you use your words to defend your position or to explore new territory together? Will you build walls to protect your perspective or bridges to connect with others? The quality of your relationships, your understanding, and ultimately your life experience depends on this choice. Your response in these pivotal moments shapes not just the immediate interaction, but the entire landscape of your relationships. When you choose defensiveness, you unknowingly construct barriers that keep understanding at bay. Each word becomes another brick in a wall that eventually imprisons both you and your perspective. But when you choose exploration, each exchange becomes an opportunity to expand your world, to discover new viewpoints that enrich rather than threaten your own. This isn't about surrendering your truth. It's about creating space for multiple truths to exist simultaneously. When you approach conversations with genuine curiosity rather than the need to be right, you transform potential confrontations into collaborations. The walls that once seemed necessary for protection become bridges that lead to deeper connection and mutual growth. Chapter 9: Emotional Weather Systems. Understanding the patterns of feeling. Imagine your emotional life as a vast, dynamic weather system, sometimes bright and clear, other times dark and turbulent, but always following discernible patterns that can be understood rather than feared. Just as meteorologists study atmospheric conditions to predict weather patterns, you possess the innate ability to recognize, understand, and navigate your emotional climate. When intense emotions arise unexpectedly, it's natural to feel overwhelmed, as if caught in a sudden storm without shelter. You might question why certain emotional patterns keep repeating, why small triggers sometimes create massive reactions, or why emotional clarity seems so elusive, despite your best efforts to maintain control. The truth is that emotions aren't random disruptions to be suppressed or problems to be solved. They're sophisticated information systems providing vital data about your internal and external environment. This principle of emotional meteorology reveals that every emotional state, from subtle shifts to intense storms, carries precise information about your needs, boundaries, and values. Consider how a skilled meteorologist doesn't just observe current conditions, but understands the complex interplay of atmospheric forces that create weather patterns. Similarly, emotional intelligence involves recognizing not just surface feelings but the deeper patterns that generate them. This awareness transforms your relationship with emotions from one of victimhood to informed navigation. The natural climate patterns of your emotional life emerge from the interaction between external triggers, internal interpretations, and habitual responses. Just as air pressure differences create predictable weather patterns, your emotional climate responds to consistent forces in your life. Understanding these patterns doesn't prevent emotional storms, but provides the awareness to navigate them skillfully. Why do cultures often pathologize emotions, treating them as disruptions to be controlled rather than messages to be understood? This perspective ignores the essential wisdom emotions provide. Research in neuroscience consistently demonstrates that emotional intelligence correlates strongly with better decision-making, healthier relationships, and improved life outcomes. When you're weather-beaten by emotions, you react to each emotional state as if it were permanent and all-encompassing. The same trigger repeatedly creates the same overwhelming response, because you haven't developed the capacity to recognize the pattern as it emerges. In contrast, being weather-wise means understanding your emotional patterns well enough to navigate them skillfully, responding to triggers with awareness rather than automatic reactions. This transformation begins with emotional tracking, developing a clear awareness of your emotional patterns, their typical triggers, their physical sensations, and their natural duration. Just as a meteorologist tracks key atmospheric indicators, you can learn to monitor the signs that precede emotional shifts in your internal climate. The practice of emotional literacy expands your capacity to recognize and name subtle emotional states, moving beyond simple categories like good or bad. This refined awareness reveals how emotions often occur in clusters and sequences, with one emotional state flowing naturally into another when given space to complete its cycle. Your emotional patterns directly influence and are influenced by the other three domains of mind, mouth, and money. Thoughts generate emotional responses. Words intensify or diminish emotional states. And financial situations trigger specific emotional patterns. Understanding these interconnections reveals why sustainable transformation requires addressing all four domains as an integrated system. The same awareness that allows you to observe thoughts without becoming entangled in them enables you to witness emotions without being overwhelmed by them. This emotional awareness represents a specific application of the observer's capacity, allowing you to maintain perspective even during intense emotional experiences. Every emotion arrives as a messenger carrying essential information about your relationship with life. Your sadness speaks to what you value. Your anger reveals where boundaries need attention. And your joy highlights what truly matters to you. When you learn to receive these messages with clarity rather than resistance, emotions become reliable guides rather than overwhelming forces. Each feeling serves as a compass pointing toward deeper self-understanding. Fear signals where growth awaits. Anxiety indicates misalignment between your actions and values, and peace confirms when you're living in harmony with your truth. By treating emotions as valued advisors rather than enemies to be conquered, you transform your relationship with your inner world. Even the most challenging feelings contain wisdom when you approach them with curiosity instead of judgment. Chapter 10. The Messenger, Not the Message. Emotions as Information. Opening into the depths of your emotional landscape, imagine receiving an urgent message, one that could transform your understanding of yourself and your life. But before the messenger can speak, you react with instant rejection, shooting them down with practiced denial, suppression, or distraction. Then, as the same challenging situations continue arising in your life, you wonder why nothing seems to change despite your best efforts. This reflexive rejection of emotional messengers has become so normalized in our society that we rarely question its wisdom. You've likely internalized messages that certain emotions are problematic, negative, or signs of weakness. When anxiety arises, you seek to eliminate it. When anger surfaces, you try to suppress it. When sadness emerges, you rush to replace it with more positive feelings. Yet this approach fundamentally misunderstands the sophisticated messaging system your emotions represent. Each emotional state arrives as a messenger carrying precise, vital information about your needs, boundaries, and values. Anxiety isn't a weakness to overcome. It's a messenger alerting you to preparation needs. Anger isn't a problem to control. It's a messenger highlighting boundary violations. Sadness isn't negativity to eliminate. It's a messenger revealing what you value by showing you what hurts when it's lost. Your emotional system functions like your body's dashboard warning lights. When the check engine light illuminates, it doesn't cause the engine problem. It alerts you to an issue requiring attention. Similarly, emotions don't cause your life challenges. They alert you to conditions needing conscious engagement. Shooting the messenger doesn't fix the underlying issue. It merely ensures you'll remain unaware of crucial information needed for meaningful change. The cultural conditioning to reject emotional messengers creates a devastating paradox. The more you attempt to eliminate uncomfortable emotions, the more persistently they return, often with increasing intensity. This pattern occurs because suppression doesn't address the underlying conditions generating these emotional alerts. Instead, it creates a backlog of undelivered messages, each containing essential data about your relationship with life. Research consistently demonstrates that emotional suppression correlates with increased psychological distress, reduced emotional awareness, and diminished ability to derive meaning from experience. Conversely, conscious engagement with emotional messages, even uncomfortable ones, leads to greater resilience, clearer decision-making, and enhanced life satisfaction. The transformative shift from messenger rejection to message reception completely changes your relationship with emotions. When anxiety arrives, instead of immediately seeking to eliminate it, you can ask, "What preparation does this situation require?" When anger surfaces, rather than suppressing it, you can inquire, "Which boundary needs attention?" When sadness emerges, instead of rushing to think positive, you can explore, "What value is this revealing?" This emotional messaging system operates with remarkable precision. Anxiety specifically signals preparation needs, highlighting areas requiring additional resources, planning, or attention. Anger precisely identifies boundary violations, revealing where limits have been crossed or values compromised. Sadness exactly pinpoints value losses, showing what matters most by illuminating what hurts when it's absent. The practice of emotional interviewing provides a systematic approach to extracting the specific information each emotion carries. Rather than trying to change or eliminate the feeling, you learn to create space for exploration. If this emotion could speak, what would it say? What specific situation triggered this message? What exactly needs attention here? For those conditioned to avoid emotional discomfort, the challenge of emotional overwhelm can seem daunting. The technique of emotional holding creates a middle path between suppression and drowning, learning to experience emotions fully while maintaining enough distance to extract their messages. This balance allows you to engage with emotional data without being consumed by emotional intensity. Each challenging emotion carries its own specific category of message. Anxiety speaks to preparation and resource needs. Anger communicates boundaries and respects requirements. Sadness reveals values and attachments. Shame highlights identity and belonging concerns. Guilt signals behavioral misalignment with values. Envy points to unacknowledged desires. Fear identifies genuine threats requiring attention. When you develop the capacity to receive these emotional messages without reflexive rejection, patterns previously hidden become clear. You begin recognizing how specific situations reliably trigger specific emotional responses, not because you're broken or weak, but because your emotional messaging system is functioning precisely as designed, attempting to deliver vital information about your relationship with life. Chapter 11: Emotional Alchemy: Transforming Reactive Patterns. Your emotional energy flows like a powerful river, carrying immense potential for both creation and destruction. When unconsciously directed, these emotional currents can erode the very foundations of your life, carving destructive patterns that deepen with each reactive cycle. Yet these same emotional energies, when consciously channeled, can nourish the fertile valleys of your experience, transforming challenges into opportunities for growth. You're likely familiar with feeling caught in emotional currents that seem beyond your control. Patterns of reaction so deeply ingrained, they appear unchangeable. Each trigger initiates a cascade of familiar responses, and despite your best intentions, you find yourself swept along in predictable ways. This experience isn't a sign of weakness or lack of control. It's the natural result of neural pathways strengthened through repetition. The art of emotional alchemy doesn't require suppressing or redirecting these powerful energies. Instead, it invites you to work with them consciously, much like learning to direct fire. The same flame that can destroy when uncontrolled becomes a source of warmth, light, and transformation when properly channeled. Your emotional energy operates under similar principles. Its impact depends not on the intensity of the emotion, but on how you direct its force. Through neural reinforcement, your brain has created efficient pathways for processing emotional triggers. These pathways, while automatic, aren't unchangeable. Each time you pause between trigger and response, you create space for new possibilities. This space, however brief, contains the potential for transformation. The process begins with recognition. Your habitual emotional patterns likely fall into recognizable categories: defensive withdrawal when feeling vulnerable, aggressive attacking when threatened, passive victimhood when overwhelmed, anxious control when uncertain, or despairing collapse when defeated. Each pattern represents a learned response to specific triggers, and each can be transformed through conscious engagement. The practice of alchemical redirection starts with catching these reactions at their earliest stage, before they've gained momentum. This requires developing sensitivity to the subtle signs of emotional activation, the slight tension, the quickened breath, the familiar thoughts that precede full reaction. In these early moments, you have the greatest leverage for transformation. The pattern interrupt serves as your first tool in this alchemical process. When you notice an emotional reaction beginning, pause. This pause, even for a split second, breaks the automatic cycle and creates space for conscious choice. Within this space, you can begin redirecting the emotional energy toward constructive expression. Transforming defensive withdrawal might involve channeling the protective energy into setting clear boundaries rather than building walls. Aggressive attacking can be redirected into assertive truth-speaking that creates connection rather than destruction. Passive victimhood can transform into empowered vulnerability that attracts support rather than perpetuating helplessness. Anxious control can become focused preparation that enhances capability rather than restricting possibility. Despairing collapse can shift into grounded acceptance that allows for new perspectives rather than cementing defeat. This redirection requires patience and persistence. You're not just creating new responses, you're establishing new neural pathways that will eventually become as automatic as your current reactions. Each time you successfully redirect emotional energy, you strengthen these new pathways while allowing the old ones to gradually weaken through disuse. The key lies in working with the energy rather than against it. Fighting emotional reactions only intensifies them. Instead, learn to feel the force of the emotion fully while maintaining enough awareness to guide its expression. This balance between feeling and directing creates the conditions for true transformation. Your capacity for emotional observation, developed through earlier practices, becomes essential here. The observer perspective allows you to maintain awareness even as emotions intensify, creating the space needed for alchemical transformation. From this vantage point, you can watch emotional energy arise while choosing its direction, rather than being swept along by habitual patterns. As you develop skill in emotional alchemy, you'll notice these transformative effects rippling through all aspects of your life. Relationships become more authentic as reactive patterns give way to responsive engagement. Decision-making improves as emotional wisdom informs rather than hijacks your choices. And perhaps most surprisingly, your relationship with money begins to shift. For financial patterns often directly mirror emotional ones, reflecting similar themes of security, worth, and possibility. Chapter 12: The Money Mirror: How Finances Reflect Inner Beliefs. Your financial reality serves as an unfailing mirror, reflecting not the beliefs you claim to hold, but the ones operating beneath your conscious awareness. Every dollar earned or spent, every opportunity seized or missed, every pattern of abundance or scarcity reveals something profound about your deepest convictions regarding worth, possibility, and prosperity. This truth can feel uncomfortable to confront. Despite sincere efforts to improve your financial situation through budgeting, planning, or investment strategies, you may find yourself repeatedly encountering the same patterns. The raise gets consumed by unexpected expenses. The savings account builds up only to be depleted by an emergency. The investment opportunity appears just when funds aren't available. These recurring patterns point to something deeper than financial management skills. The money mirror concept reveals that financial circumstances function as precise reflections of internal beliefs. Just as a mirror cannot show anything other than what stands before it, your financial reality cannot manifest anything beyond what your deepest beliefs will allow. This explains why two people with identical financial knowledge and opportunities often create dramatically different results. When you understand this mirror principle, you realize why traditional approaches to financial improvement often fail to create lasting change. Attempting to transform your financial reality by manipulating external circumstances is like trying to change your reflection by adjusting the mirror itself. The image can only change when you alter what the mirror reflects. This doesn't discount the role of external factors like market conditions, economic cycles, or systemic inequities. Rather, it illuminates how your internal belief system determines your response to these conditions. Some people find opportunities in economic downturns while others see only threats. Some build wealth steadily regardless of circumstances while others struggle despite favorable conditions. The difference lies not in external factors but in the consciousness being reflected. Your current financial reality reflects specific beliefs about money, worth, and possibility that likely formed long before you had any conscious awareness of them. These beliefs emerged from family patterns, early experiences, cultural conditioning, and significant events involving money. They now operate as invisible directors, shaping your financial decisions and results from behind the scenes. Examining your financial patterns reveals these underlying beliefs with remarkable precision. Chronic under-earning often reflects deep beliefs about worthiness or timing. Inability to retain money suggests beliefs about deserving or safety. Fluctuating income patterns point to beliefs about consistency and trust. Every financial challenge contains information about the consciousness creating it. The real power of the money mirror lies not in its diagnostic ability, but in its transformative potential. When you shift your focus from changing circumstances to transforming consciousness, you engage the true leverage point for financial evolution. This shift requires moving beyond surface-level money management to examine and rewire the beliefs being reflected in your financial reality. Common limiting beliefs revealed through the money mirror include: there's never enough, scarcity, I don't deserve abundance, unworthiness, it's not the right time, timing, money is complicated, complexity, money causes problems, conflict, I can't handle wealth, responsibility, and my financial situation will never change, stagnation. Each of these beliefs creates specific patterns in your financial reality until consciously transformed. This transformation process parallels the mental rewiring explored earlier, identifying limiting beliefs, creating new neural pathways, and consistently redirecting attention until new patterns emerge. The money mirror simply provides precise feedback about what beliefs are actually operating versus what you think you believe. The bridge to financial freedom thus becomes clear. Lasting transformation occurs not through controlling circumstances, but through evolving consciousness. As you change what the money mirror reflects, your financial reality naturally transforms to match your expanded awareness. Your relationship with money shifts from one of struggle and resistance to one of flow and alignment. The external changes you've been seeking, greater income, smarter investments, reduced debt, emerge organically as your inner landscape transforms. This isn't about forcing outcomes through sheer willpower. It's about allowing your natural abundance to surface as you release the beliefs that have been blocking it. Just as water naturally flows when obstacles are removed, prosperity becomes your default state when limiting patterns dissolve. Chapter 13. Beyond Budgeting. The Consciousness of Wealth Creation. When you approach personal finances, two distinct paths emerge, much like two fundamentally different approaches to cultivating a garden. One path involves meticulously measuring and restricting water flow, constantly monitoring plant growth with rulers and charts, and trying to control every variable through force of will. The other focuses primarily on enriching the soil, strengthening root systems, and creating conditions where abundance naturally emerges. While both gardeners want their plants to thrive, their methodologies create vastly different experiences and results. Similarly, your approach to financial wellness likely falls into one of these patterns. You may find yourself exhaustively tracking every expense, setting rigid boundaries around spending, and attempting to control your financial reality through sheer discipline and restriction. This budget-focused approach can work temporarily, but often leaves you feeling constrained, deprived, and ultimately returning to old patterns when willpower inevitably wanes. Creation consciousness offers a fundamentally different paradigm. Rather than focusing primarily on controlling outflow, it emphasizes expanding both income potential and the consciousness that generates it. This shift transforms financial management from an exercise in restriction to an exploration of possibility. Consider how water flows in nature. Traditional budgeting resembles building a dam across a small stream, attempting to control and direct limited resources through force. While dams serve important purposes, they also create resistance, require constant maintenance, and can only work with the water already present in the stream. Creation consciousness, by contrast, focuses on connecting to an abundant reservoir that naturally provides more than enough flow. Rather than fighting against scarcity, it taps into sources of abundance. This doesn't mean ignoring responsible money management. Just as a garden requires some boundaries and structure, your finances need appropriate guidelines and systems. However, when restriction becomes the primary focus, it triggers psychological resistance that makes lasting transformation nearly impossible. The mind instinctively rebels against perceived deprivation, leading to cycles of rigid control followed by reactive spending. Creation consciousness approaches financial wellness from an entirely different angle. Rather than asking, "How can I spend less?" it asks, "How can I create more value?" Instead of focusing on cutting expenses, it emphasizes expanding capacity for wealth generation. This subtle but crucial shift transforms financial management from a necessary burden into an exciting exploration of possibility. The practical application of this principle begins with value recognition, systematically identifying the unique forms of value you can create, rather than focusing primarily on controlling expenses. This involves deeply examining your skills, knowledge, experience, and natural abilities to recognize opportunities for generating wealth through value exchange. Traditional employment typically creates wealth through trading time for money, an inherently limited equation since time itself is finite. Wealth channel expansion involves identifying and opening new channels of value exchange not restricted by time for money limitations. This might involve developing intellectual property, creating scalable systems, or leveraging technology to deliver value to more people simultaneously. The transition from budget-focused to creation-focused thinking transforms every area of financial life. Income shifts from a fixed number to be managed to a flexible reflection of value created. Spending becomes an investment in growth rather than a drain to be controlled. Saving emerges naturally from abundance rather than requiring constant discipline. Investing flows from wisdom rather than fear. Debt transforms from a burden to be escape to leverage for creating greater value. Giving and receiving both expand as scarcity consciousness dissolves. Your words about money either restrict or expand these possibilities. When you speak of not enough, can't afford, or too expensive, you reinforce scarcity consciousness. When you instead ask, how can I create this? Or what value can I offer? Зрение. Вы активизируете сознание творчества. The language you use shapes the financial reality you experience. As you embrace this shift from restriction to creation, notice how your entire relationship with money begins to transform. Rather than seeing finances as a problem to solve, you recognize them as a creative force to direct. Instead of trying to control limited resources, you focus on expanding your capacity to generate and receive abundance. Money flows naturally toward value creation, just as water flows downhill. Each financial choice becomes an opportunity to align with this creative force, rather than resist it. Your attention shifts from what you lack to what you can build, from what you must protect to what you can grow. This fundamental shift in perspective opens new possibilities that remain invisible when viewing money through the lens of limitation. Chapter 14. The currency of life energy, aligning money with meaning. Every dollar passing through your hands represents a stored unit of your most irreplaceable resource, your life energy. This isn't abstract philosophy but concrete reality. Each financial transaction exchanges portions of your limited lifetime that were invested to earn that money. When you truly grasp this fundamental truth, it transforms how you view every spending decision. Most people evaluate purchases purely through numerical calculations. Can I afford this? Is it a good deal? Will I save money? While these questions matter, they miss the deeper exchange taking place. That $50 dinner isn't just currency. It's the 2 hours of your unique talents, creativity, and vitality that you traded to earn it. That $30,000 car represents not just a price tag, but nearly 1,000 hours of your life force directed toward its acquisition. Life energy awareness brings an entirely new dimension to financial choices. Rather than abstract numbers in your bank account, you begin to see your money as concrete units of your most precious asset, time alive. This shift in perspective naturally aligns spending with what truly matters without requiring rigid budgets or iron willpower. Consider two identical purchases, perhaps a $200 phone upgrade. When viewed purely as numbers, the decision focuses on features, deals, and financial mechanics. But through the lens of life energy, you automatically consider deeper questions. Does this upgrade truly merit trading 8 hours of my life force? Would directing that life energy toward other priorities create more meaningful returns? The clarity this brings often eliminates the need for complex decision-making processes. This awareness functions like an internal GPS for navigating the landscape of life through financial choices. Each expenditure determines whether your limited journey follows meandering detours or moves directly toward fulfilling destinations. Just as you wouldn't randomly wander without consulting your map, life energy consciousness prevents unconscious spending that diverts you from your chosen path. The cultural pressure toward unconscious consumption runs deep. Advertising, social expectations, and ingrained habits all push toward exchanging life energy without careful consideration. Yet when you consistently translate financial costs into the actual life exchange they represent, you naturally make choices that enhance both financial well-being and life satisfaction. This isn't about complex calculations or restrictive rules. It's about maintaining awareness of the real currency being traded in every transaction. A simple practice is translating costs into the hours required to earn that amount, factoring in not just time but energy depletion, stress, and life impact. This creates an automatic filter that screens purchases through the lens of meaningful value. For example, a $100 monthly subscription may seem minor, but recognizing it as 4 hours of life energy each month, 48 hours annually, brings immediate clarity about whether that exchange truly serves your highest priorities. This awareness extends beyond pure consumption to career choices, investment decisions, and even relationship economics. The power of life energy awareness lies in its ability to harmonize financial choices with deeper values automatically. Rather than relying on willpower to restrict spending, you naturally direct resources toward what matters most. This creates resonance across all 4 pillars: mental clarity about priorities, conscious communication about resources, emotional wisdom in decisions, and financial choices aligned with purpose. The practice becomes particularly powerful when evaluating major life decisions. Career changes, business investments, and lifestyle choices take on new clarity when viewed through life energy exchange. You begin seeing opportunities not just in terms of financial returns, but in terms of life force optimization. Which paths allow your energy to flow toward maximum meaningful impact? This heightened awareness naturally extends to how you invest your life energy to generate income. Rather than simply trading time for money, you begin recognizing ways to create value that energize rather than deplete you. This often reveals opportunities for more efficient energy-to-income ratios, whether through skill development, business creation, or investment strategies. Most importantly, life energy awareness creates a foundation for legacy planning that transcends pure financial considerations. You begin seeing wealth not just as accumulated money, but as stored life force that can continue creating positive impact even after your direct involvement ends. This perspective naturally guides choices toward sustainable value creation, rather than mere consumption. Your decisions shift from short-term gratification to long-term transformation, as you recognize how today's energy investments ripple outward through time. Whether through business ventures, creative works, or meaningful relationships, you start building structures that amplify and channel your life force in ways that benefit others long after the initial investment. This deeper understanding of wealth as crystallized life energy opens new possibilities for creating lasting positive change in the world. Chapter 15: The Virtuous Cycle: Creating Positive Momentum Across All Domains. When you begin the journey of profound personal transformation, It often feels like pushing an impossibly heavy boulder uphill. The initial resistance seems overwhelming, progress appears minimal, and the temptation to abandon the effort grows with each challenging step. Yet hidden within this struggle lies a profound truth about integrated change, one that transforms your entire approach once understood. Consider the physics of that boulder for a moment. As you first apply force, most of your energy works against static friction, the strongest form of resistance. Each inch of progress demands maximum effort. But something remarkable happens as the boulder begins to move. Rolling friction requires significantly less force to maintain momentum than static friction did to initiate movement. Reach the peak of the hill, and the same mass that fought against you now works in your favor, generating its own forward momentum. This principle reveals the secret of sustainable transformation across the four pillars of mind, mouth, mood, and money. While initial changes require concentrated effort against ingrained patterns, strategically directed energy eventually triggers self-reinforcing momentum, what we call the virtuous cycle. Understanding this dynamic completely shifts how you approach personal growth. Most attempts change through fragmented efforts, applying intense force to one area while neglecting others. They might attack financial habits through strict budgeting, ignoring how their thoughts about money, words about wealth, and emotional patterns around security all work to maintain the status quo. The boulder barely budges because they're pushing against the full weight of an integrated system. But small strategic changes applied across interconnected domains create compound effects. When you consciously direct your thoughts, your words naturally begin to shift. When you speak differently, your emotional landscape transforms. As emotions stabilize, financial choices improve automatically. Each dimension reinforces the others, building momentum until the entire system tips into a self-sustaining positive spiral. This integrated approach follows clear principles of systems change. Complex systems resist alteration until critical thresholds are reached, at which point they can rapidly reorganize into new stable patterns. Like a flywheel that requires significant initial force, but eventually maintains momentum with minimal input, personal transformation demands sustained effort through the resistance phase before breakthrough momentum emerges. The key lies in understanding that progress isn't linear. During early stages, most energy goes into overcoming systemic inertia. Visible results may be minimal while internal pressure builds. Many abandon their efforts here, not realizing they're on the verge of exponential change. But persistence through this phase, while maintaining awareness across all four domains, inevitably leads to tipping points where resistance gives way to reinforcing momentum. This transformation through virtuous cycles doesn't require complex strategies. What matters most is consistent, intentional engagement with all four pillars. Start with a minimum effective dose, the smallest intervention in each domain that creates maximum cross-domain impact. Rather than overwhelming yourself with massive changes, identify precise leverage points where small shifts ripple through the entire system. For instance, a mind-initiated cycle might begin with identifying one limiting belief about capability. As you work to reshape this thought pattern, consciously choose words that reinforce the new perspective. Notice how this affects your emotional state, which in turn influences financial choices. Each domain amplifies changes in the others, building momentum with less effort than trying to force change in isolation. The key to triggering these virtuous cycles lies in strategic sequencing. Rather than trying to transform everything at once, gradually expand your focus across domains while maintaining gains. Start where you have the most leverage, whether through thought work, communication shifts, emotional regulation, or financial adjustments. As that area stabilizes, systematically integrate the others while riding the momentum you've already generated. This system's approach transcends willpower-based change. Rather than fighting against established patterns, you create conditions where positive change becomes the path of least resistance. The same interconnected nature that once maintained limiting patterns now works in your favor, with each domain naturally pulling the others into alignment. By understanding transformation through the lens of virtuous cycles, you shift from pushing against resistance to strategically building momentum. The boulder that once seemed immovable becomes an unstoppable force for positive change, powered by the very interconnections that previously held old patterns in place. Your progress accelerates naturally as each small win reinforces the others, creating an upward spiral of growth. What begins as a subtle shift in one area ripples outward, touching every aspect of your life with increasing power and purpose. The same interconnected web that once trapped you in limitation now propels you forward, turning obstacles into stepping stones and resistance into rocket fuel for your transformation. Chapter 16. The Integration Practice, Daily Rituals for Holistic Transformation. You know what separates world-class performers from talented amateurs? It's not natural ability, motivation, or even knowledge of what to do. The true differentiator lies in their reliance on consistent foundational practices rather than sporadic bursts of effort. While amateurs depend on willpower and inspiration, masters build systems that maintain excellence automatically. This principle extends far beyond professional domains into personal transformation. The most profound changes don't emerge from occasional heroic efforts, but from strategic daily rituals that maintain momentum across all areas of life. Yet you likely know this truth firsthand, understanding what to do, but struggling with consistent implementation as life's demands compete for your limited time and energy. The solution lies not in trying harder, but in designing smarter. Enter the integration practice, a comprehensive daily ritual requiring less than 30 minutes that maintains and strengthens all four pillars through strategic micro-interventions. This isn't another item on your to-do list. It's a foundational system that makes everything else easier. Think of your car's maintenance schedule. Skip regular oil changes and minor adjustments, and you'll eventually face major mechanical failures requiring expensive repairs. But maintain these small, consistent practices, and your vehicle runs smoothly year after year with minimal effort. The same principle applies to personal transformation. The power of properly designed rituals lies in their ability to bypass willpower entirely. Through consistent timing and sequencing, these practices become as automatic as brushing your teeth, requiring virtually no conscious effort to maintain. More importantly, strategic rituals create disproportionate impact by targeting leverage points that affect multiple domains simultaneously. You might resist adding another practice to your already full schedule, but consider this. Properly designed rituals eventually require less energy to maintain than the problems they prevent. Just as regular toothbrushing requires less time and effort than dealing with dental problems, consistent personnel practices prevent larger issues from developing across all four domains. The integration practice isn't complex. It's deliberately simple to ensure sustainability. The practice consists of four seamlessly connected components: mind-centering contemplation, a brief period of focused awareness that resets mental patterns and strengthens the observer capacity; conscious communication priming, strategic reflection, and intention setting that shapes both self-talk and external communication throughout the day. Emotional check-in and reset. Quick but powerful emotional awareness practice that maintains balance and prevents reactive patterns. Financial alignment review. Brief but comprehensive review of financial choices and their alignment with core values and life energy. When approached separately, these practices might seem overwhelming, but properly integrated, they flow naturally from one to the next, creating a single unified ritual that maintains momentum across all domains. The key lies in proper ritual design, creating personally tailored practices that address your specific patterns and priorities. This isn't about adopting someone else's morning routine or following rigid prescriptions. It's about identifying the minimum effective interventions that create maximum impact in your unique system. But what about schedule disruptions? Life rarely follows perfect routines. This is where portable practice becomes essential. Learning to adapt the core ritual to different circumstances without losing its essential elements. Whether you have 30 minutes or 5 minutes, whether you're at home or traveling, the practice can be modified while maintaining its transformative power. The integration practice functions as the flywheel that maintains momentum across all domains. While individual efforts create change, this daily ritual ensures those changes become permanent features of your transformed life, rather than temporary improvements that fade with time. Even world-class performers face resistance to their daily practices, but they understand something crucial. The practice itself generates the energy required to maintain it. Just as a car's alternator recharges the battery that keeps the engine running, a properly designed ritual creates the clarity, energy, and motivation needed for its own continuation. The initial push through resistance becomes easier with each passing day as momentum builds and compounds. What starts as an uphill battle transforms into a self-sustaining cycle of growth, where each session fuels your capacity for the next. This is why struggling through those first difficult days matters so much. You're not just building a habit, you're creating an energetic foundation that will carry you forward with increasing power and purpose. Chapter 17. Navigating Setbacks. Maintaining Momentum Through Challenges. Your journey of transformation mirrors that of an ocean voyage. Success depends not on perfect conditions, but on your ability to skillfully adjust your course through whatever conditions arise. While smooth sailing brings swift progress, it's the storms that truly test and ultimately strengthen your mastery of navigation. You're likely familiar with this pattern. Periods of clear progress followed by unexpected setbacks that can feel devastatingly personal. These moments when old patterns resurface, communication breaks down, emotions spiral, or financial stability wavers often trigger a deep urge to abandon ship entirely. After all, isn't regression proof that your efforts have failed? This interpretation, though natural, fundamentally misunderstands the nature of transformation. Setbacks are not failures to be avoided, but essential elements of the journey itself, providing both crucial information and strengthening functions when properly navigated. Just as a sailor learns more about navigation during storms than clear weather, your moments of challenge reveal system vulnerabilities that would otherwise remain hidden. Consider how your immune system develops. It doesn't grow stronger through protection from challenges, but through strategic exposure that builds resilience. Similarly, your capacity for transformation expands not through avoiding setbacks, but through skillfully engaging with them. This principle holds true across all 4 domains: mind, mouth, mood, and money. When thought patterns you thought you'd mastered suddenly resurface, They reveal which neural pathways still require reinforcement. When communication breaks down, despite your best intentions, you discover which aspects of conscious dialogue need deeper integration. When emotional reactions overwhelm your new awareness practices, they highlight areas where your observer capacity requires strengthening. When financial patterns regress, they expose beliefs still operating beneath conscious choice. The key lies not in preventing these challenges, but in transforming how you respond to them. Rather than triggering abandonment or regression, setbacks can actually accelerate your progress when approached with strategic wisdom. This doesn't require special resilience or extraordinary willpower. It simply demands a shift in how you interpret and engage with challenges. The difference between regression and progression often comes down to one crucial choice: whether you meet setbacks with judgment or curiosity. Judgment triggers defensive responses that reinforce old patterns. Curiosity opens the door to new understanding and more skillful navigation. This shift begins with what I call the setback protocol, a systematic approach that transforms challenges from apparent obstacles into actual accelerators. Rather than reacting from emotion, you learn to pause and engage with four key questions. What specific pattern has been activated? What triggered this activation? What vulnerability does this reveal? What adjustment would address this vulnerability? This inquiry process requires compassion rather than criticism. Just as you wouldn't berate a child learning to walk for occasional stumbles, you must extend understanding to yourself during moments of regression. This doesn't mean complacency. It means creating the emotional safety needed for honest examination and strategic adjustment. The protocol then guides specific responses based on which domain the setback appears in. For thought pattern relapses, it directs attention to strengthening alternative neural pathways rather than fighting old ones. For communication breakdowns, it focuses on identifying the precise point where conscious dialogue gave way to reactive patterns. For emotional spirals, it emphasizes expanding observer capacity rather than suppressing reactions. For financial regressions, it targets the specific beliefs triggered rather than just the surface behaviors. This navigation process depends entirely on your ability to maintain the observer perspective explored earlier, creating space between the setback and your response to it. Without this space, emotional reactivity hijacks strategic wisdom, turning temporary challenges into sustained regressions. With this space, even significant setbacks become opportunities for deeper integration and accelerated progress. The real transformation occurs when you stop seeing setbacks as problems to solve and start recognizing them as feedback guiding you toward greater understanding. This shift in perspective transforms the entire journey from a struggle against obstacles into a process of continuous refinement through strategic engagement with whatever arises. Each challenge becomes a signpost pointing toward areas needing integration rather than a roadblock to be overcome. When viewed through this lens, even the most difficult setbacks reveal themselves as opportunities to strengthen your foundation and deepen your mastery of these essential domains. The very moments that once derailed your progress now serve as catalysts for breakthrough insights, accelerating your growth in ways that smooth sailing never could. Chapter 18: Beyond Control: From Management to Mastery. Imagine standing on the banks of a powerful river, watching two boats make their way upstream. The first paddler strains against the current, muscles taut with effort, fighting every moment to maintain forward progress. The second, equally intent on the destination, reads the river's patterns and flows with them, finding the paths of least resistance, utilizing eddies and counter currents, achieving greater progress with significantly less exertion. This fundamental difference between exhausting struggle and skillful harmony perfectly illustrates the paradox at the heart of true transformation. While the journey begins with consistent effort and conscious attention, it culminates not in perfect control, but in perfect alignment, where right action emerges naturally rather than through continuous management. Your own experience likely reflects this pattern. The early stages of change demand significant energy, monitoring thoughts, consciously choosing words, managing emotional responses, tracking financial decisions. This vigilance serves an essential purpose, building new neural pathways and breaking old patterns. Yet if sustained indefinitely, it creates its own form of bondage, the exhaustion of perpetual self-management. True mastery follows a different path. Just as a beginning pianist must consciously think about every note while an accomplished musician expresses naturally through their instrument, transformation progresses from effortful control to effortless embodiment. This shift doesn't indicate less commitment, but rather a deeper integration where wisdom operates spontaneously through rather than from the individual. Consider how this progression appears in any skill development. Initially, conscious competence requires focused attention, like carefully forming each letter when learning to write. With continued practice, the skill becomes embodied. Writing flows naturally without conscious thought about letter formation. The same principle applies to the four domains of transformation. In the domain of mind, you move from vigilantly monitoring thoughts to experiencing natural mental clarity. Rather than constantly redirecting attention, appropriate thoughts arise spontaneously aligned with your deepest values. The observer perspective becomes your natural state, rather than a practice to maintain. In communication, you transition from carefully choosing every word to authentic expression that naturally serves truth and connection. Rather than filtering through conscious rules, your speech spontaneously reflects wisdom and compassion. The right words emerge without effort because they flow from transformed consciousness rather than strategic management. Emotional mastery shifts from controlling reactions to experiencing intuitive responsiveness. Rather than managing feelings through willpower, you develop such intimate familiarity with emotional currents that appropriate responses arise organically. Like a skilled surfer reading waves, you move with rather than against emotional energy. Financial mastery transforms from vigilant tracking to natural prosperity consciousness. Rather than constantly monitoring decisions against budgets and rules, aligned choices emerge spontaneously from a transformed relationship with value. Like a master chef who no longer needs recipes, wisdom operates through intuitive knowing rather than conscious calculation. This progression from management to mastery requires a profound trust in the natural intelligence that operates when conscious control steps aside. This trust develops gradually through consistent practice and repeated experiences of wisdom, emerging spontaneously when you release rigid control. The key lies in what I call conscious surrender, maintaining clear intention while releasing attachment to controlling the process. This isn't passive abdication, but active alignment with the natural wisdom that already knows how to create harmony. Like a skilled sailor working with rather than against the wind, you learn to harness forces larger than individual will. Just as a river naturally finds its path to the ocean, consciousness naturally moves toward greater alignment when we stop impeding it with exhausting control efforts. This reveals perhaps the deepest paradox of transformation. What begins as four separate domains to master ultimately reveals itself as one integrated consciousness, expressing through different channels. When you truly grasp this unity, You see how forcing change in one area while neglecting others creates internal resistance and conflict. Your thoughts, words, emotions, and financial choices flow from the same source. They are different expressions of your underlying consciousness seeking harmony. Like tributaries joining to form a mighty river, these seemingly distinct aspects merge into a single powerful current when you release the need to compartmentalize and control them individually. Conclusion: throughout this journey, you've been constructing more than just understanding. You've been building a temple of transformation, supported by the four essential pillars of mind, mouth, mood, and money. Now it's time to fully inhabit this temple you've created, to live from the integrated consciousness it represents, rather than merely visiting it for occasional inspiration. Like any profound structure, your temple of transformation doesn't require constant maintenance once properly established. Instead, it serves as a living system that naturally maintains harmony when you remain aligned with its fundamental principles. The four pillars work together seamlessly, each supporting and strengthening the others without requiring your constant attention. You've discovered how the observer's perspective transforms your relationship with thought, creating space between stimulus and response, where wisdom naturally emerges. This same capacity extends into how you speak, allowing words to arise from clarity rather than reaction. Your emotional landscape has revealed itself as an intelligent messaging system, providing precise guidance when you listen without resistance. And your relationship with money has transformed from numerical management to conscious creation, recognizing every financial choice as an exchange of precious life energy. These insights don't represent techniques to master, but remembrance of what you already are. A conscious being temporarily limited by perspective rather than permanently constrained by circumstance. The challenges you encounter moving forward aren't obstacles to overcome, but opportunities to deepen this remembrance, to integrate more fully what you already know at the deepest level. When you notice mental chaos arising, it signals not failure but an invitation to step back into the observer's perspective. When communication becomes strained, it reminds you to return to the generative power of conscious speech. Emotional turbulence points toward messages requiring attention, while financial stress indicates areas where life energy alignment needs restoration. This integrated awareness naturally extends beyond personal transformation. As you maintain harmony across all four pillars, your presence automatically uplifts relationships, enhances community connections, and contributes to collective evolution. This impact doesn't require strategic effort, but emerges spontaneously from your transformed consciousness. Remember, when mind, mouth, mood, and money align in harmony, you don't just improve four aspects of life, you transform the very foundation of your existence. This alignment creates a level of freedom, clarity, and fulfillment that transcends conventional notions of success or happiness. You access a state of being where right action emerges naturally, where wisdom operates through you rather than from you, and where life's challenges become opportunities for deeper integration rather than obstacles to overcome. Live from this temple you've constructed. Let its harmony inform every aspect of your life. Trust the wisdom that emerges when all four pillars stand strong together. Your journey continues, but you now possess the understanding needed to navigate any evolution with confidence and clarity. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember, you're capable of so much more than you know. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember, you're capable of so much more than you know. Now, take the next step and make it happen.